We are coming to continuing with our afternoon program, and as we kind of alluded to earlier in the day, certainly the Canadian market is often a very big topic at many GELFs. For many of the brands here, Canada represents their biggest, international market, and so joining me today is Will Ryan with Woven, and I'll get both these guys to introduce themselves in a second, and Thomas Taggart from Passport. So, Tom, why don't you start?
Sure. Tom Taggart, I head up global trade for Passport Shipping, which is trade, tax, and returns. And Passport is our goal is to help brands go global, and we focus on U.S. export for D2C brands and making it as easy as possible for them to reach new customers in new markets.
Okay, Will, welcome.
Thank you, great to be here. My name is Will Ryan, and I am COO and co-founder at Woven, and we are a sustainable athleisure brand based here in Los Angeles.
Okay, well, let's go a little deeper here. Tell us about, how did Woven, come to be?
Absolutely. So my partner Kieran and I founded Woven in art school at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, and we basically kind of bootstrapped the business out of our garage. And in the early days, I was writing shipping labels by hand and longboarding to the local post office or post office box to drop off our packages. And fast forward to 2020, we're shipping about 10,000 orders a month out of my two-car garage. So needless to say, we've come a long way, and we're stoked for all the growth. And I would credit our early success and traction to kind of building a cult community in real life by touring with Wanderlust Yoga Festival and a number of music festivals where we really built this community that we were then able to amplify online and really take advantage of the early days of organic growth on Instagram. Sustainability has been always at the forefront of everything we do. So our apparel is made from recycled PET from recycled plastic, and we are with 1% for the planet. So we donate 1% of our annual revenues to environmental nonprofits. We're also climate neutral certified, which means that we offset our annual carbon footprint. And we also work with an organization called One Earth, One Ocean. So essentially, we sponsor the prevention or removal of 1 pound of ocean plastic or waste for every order that we receive. And in short, I would say that we are kind of positioning the brand as like a next-gen Patagonia for millennials and Gen Z.
Yeah, give us a sense of the product lineup.
For sure. It's primarily activewear and swimwear, and we're about 90% women's right now, but expanding into men's shortly. So.
Nice. How's the menswear side going so far?
Pretty well, but yeah, it's the minority of the business. But we're actually raising capital for the first time after bootstrapping this far, and our men's line is definitely going to be something that we really invest in with our capital raise.
Excellent,
So.
excellent. Well, let's talk about your go-to-market channels, and we'll kind of get more specifically into Canada. But what does your current international e-commerce footprint look like?
For sure. So about 30% of our revenue is international, partially thanks to Passport and kind of the way that they enable us to ship DDP. We're 90% direct to consumer and about 10% wholesale with small fitness and yoga studios, many of which we acquire through Fair, the B2B marketplace. We work with a number of other ethical marketplaces, which I think is great for exposure. But yeah, primarily DTC. Moving forward, we are targeting a more even omni-channel mix because we see a lot of brands are pivoting that direction. And ultimately these days, they say that physical real estate has become cheaper than digital real estate. So yeah, that's our plan moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So you think the wholesale side, may have some bigger upside as you graduate, so to speak, to some bigger retailers? Is that kind of the idea?
Absolutely. And then there's a huge synergy component where offline and online support each other because of course online customers want to be able to find the product in person. So.
Did that 30% of your revenue coming from international, did that surprise you, or was that by design?
Kind of by design. I mean, we've always kind of wanted to be a worldwide brand, and I think we resonate with a lot of other emerging markets and cultures with our really vibrant prints. And Yeah, pretty much by design.
And likely tied to your marketing as well, where again, you were getting that reach, to overseas?
Yeah, exactly. So oftentimes when the ad costs in the U.S. are spiking, we find that they might be much cheaper in other markets, and we're able to kind of take advantage of that when they're too high in the U.S. And yeah, we're seeing a ton of success in Canada, Australia, Europe, and lots of places in Asia.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, and yet at the same time, it's a fairly common story for us to hear again. Those English-speaking markets, kind of predominate your early, global e-commerce footprint. We'll talk about Canada more specifically in a minute here. But Tom, why don't you kind of take us through, some of the slides that should be on screen here.
Okay.
Because I know that Tom and team have really pulled together some information that we think is very valuable for our community. I mean, certainly Canada being a big market for a lot of brands, yet there's been a lot of change happening, right?
Sure. Yeah, Jim and I were talking about the 3 major changes that have happened recently and that are pending that impact shipping to Canada. So we'll walk through a couple of those today. USMCA, the tax changes last July, and the CARM that's coming up at a to-be-announced date. So going through that, July 2020 seems like a long time ago now, but we still have these conversations to emphasize the importance of the changes of the new NAFTA or USMCA. Last July, there were some major changes to the tax structure in Canada, and that has impacted how brands do ship to Canada. And the last thing is CARM, which was supposed to be happening right now, and now it's gotten pushed back to November and potentially January 1st of 2023. But we'll talk a little bit about what all those mean. But the big change for the new NAFTA USMCA was the increase in de minimis, which, and just to level set that, de minimis is the threshold below which duties or taxes would not apply. So it used to be $20 Canadian across the board, whether you were shipping through the postal system or through a carrier, and that increased to $40 for tax. So anything less than 40 Canadian dollars would clear into Canada free of GST, HST, PST, all the various Canadian tax structures, and anything under 150 Canadian would clear free of duties. But what we saw is this really drove 3 main shifts in the market. The traditional advice was you should register as a non-resident importer, and you don't need to establish a presence in Canada, but through this USNRI program, you can become the importer of record and ship to Canada. And that made sense until the de minimis increased, because if you are the importer as an NRI, you're not able to take advantage of those de minimis levels. So that's a big impact, and we saw more brands shipping to the pattern of having the Canadian consumer be the importer. The second thing was postal is very easy, it's accessible, and it's cheap. But with this shift, the postal de minimis did not change. It stayed at 20 across the board, and so it made more sense to look at commercial clearance using carriers and consolidators to reach the market. And the third thing was DDU is not a great experience, but it is where most brands start. But with the shift there to the higher de minimis levels, it made more sense to surface landed cost, total landed cost at time of checkout, even guaranteed landed cost, and present that so that the customer experience is much more enjoyable. We've heard a few stories about the carrier showing up at the door and asking for additional money, and nobody wants to see that. So that's the other shift in the market is to the DDP.
So, what did that mean for you then, Will, in your business? I mean, that de minimis change alone, right? I mean, moving it from to $150 for the tax de minimis. Did that all of a sudden now put some of your product under that threshold?
Yes, it did. And yes, I remember everyone was kind of freaking out about, oh, July 1st, we have to register and figure all this out, and another tax bill is kind of the last thing an entrepreneur needs to juggle. So. Yeah, basically I was thrilled when Passport told me that I didn't have to register myself and that I could, just run my shipments through Passport.
Right, right. Tell us about your the Canadian market in general. Was this something that again, you started out with this kind of global vision. You want to build a global brand. Canada being, of course, the biggest neighboring market, and typically we'd see that kind of growth. Is that something that you purposely resourced, heavily, or again because you thought, well, we'll be able to pick some up, an extra 10%, sales or something like that? What was your mindset going into kind of let's grow our Canadian market presence?
Totally, yeah. I think we really kind of started out with great just organic growth in Canada. There's a lot of health and wellness focused yogis up there, a lot of yoga studios, and it is our #1 market. And we pretty much just treated it as an extension of the U.S. We haven't really done that much differently besides, of course, currency conversion. We've thought about really going all out with localization, but at the end of the day, we really want to kind of maintain the Los Angeles U.S. vibe and kind of project that out. But we are looking forward to kind of localizing and improving the site a little bit moving forward. In terms of shipping to Canada, we did consider working with the 3PL in Canada, but if you check out our Instagram, you'll see we have tons of prints. So all those prints translates to thousands of SKUs, and as a small business, it just wasn't practical or feasible to duplicate our entire inventory into a warehouse in Canada. So for now, at least, we're going to continue fulfilling from Los Angeles.
Okay, so again, you developed these relationships, with several yoga studios and yogis. I mean, in a sense, taking a page out of Lululemon's playbook going way back, right?
Absolutely.
And again, that certainly has been a proven path to kind of get your product out there. Tom, what's that? This mean with other clients that you guys are working with? With the de minimis change, have you seen that much more focus and effort? Okay, now we have a bigger opportunity to really raise the size of the prize with the Canadian market.
Yeah, absolutely. Canada is the #1 market in the obvious extension, and I think there are some complexities of shipping to Canada, so we do try to make that as simple as possible for the brand and to take the complexity out of it. I think many brands realize that Canada is actually not the 51st state. It is a sovereign nation, and they have different tax laws that are closer to the European tax laws than they are to U.S. tax laws. So that's been a big shift there, and we can go into a little bit of detail about the changes there that Will mentioned last July.
Yeah.
So part of that was, and this is actually called the Netflix tax informally, where the Canadian government realized how much money they were losing out on with digital sales and digital content that was being sold into Canada by U.S. companies that had no presence. And so they closed that loophole and said, regardless of where in the world you exist, if you're selling digital services into Canada, you must register for a tax ID, you must account for the general sales tax, the GST. And there was a lot of misinterpretation there because the other provision in the bill said if you're fulfilling from Canada, you now must also account for GST. They had a few provisions that were misinterpreted, like the 30,000 threshold, and we've seen so many brands where this, if you read the rules, you would obviously misinterpret it and think that if I'm selling $30,000 in product worldwide, I must register for a tax ID in Canada. And the reality is, unless you're fulfilling from Canada, there really is no reason for a direct-to-consumer brand to have to register for a GST and to account for that as the Canadian sales tax. But we did see a number of brands go through this process of registration. But the real, on the right side here, the big negative impacts are, as we mentioned, when you're the importer, you're no longer able to take advantage of the $40 Canadian tax de minimis or the $150 duty de minimis. So that's a big hit. But not to mention the complexity of having to file periodic taxes and to account for that, and now to try to reclaim the taxes through this input tax credit if you're paying taxes at the border, but also paying taxes again when you have to file. So it's a big administrative burden for for brands that have gone through this process of registering when they didn't have to, and much simpler for brands if you are shipping direct to consumer and you're not fulfilling from Canada to stick with the current program, and that's everything's accounted for at the border, and all duties and taxes owed are paid, and there's no more tax liability for the brand at that point.
So what happens with some companies who have maybe misread, these changes? Can they reverse course, or anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've seen a number of brands do that, where the rule is you do have to maintain your tax ID for at least a year, and then you can shut it down. But as long as you're still completing the periodic filings, you don't have to have any revenue associated with that. So we've worked with a number of brands to make sure that they were legally compliant by putting language in their terms of sale to ensure that this model will apply, that all taxes are due at the border, and the place of supply is the big buzzword here or term to be aware of. If place of supply is the U.S., then no further Canadian taxes are owed in the filing. So that's the big difference. If you're selling in Canada or fulfilling from Canada, then place of supply becomes Canada, and you're liable for the taxes.
Right. Since we just talked about the metaverse, any idea? Does that apply? Like, how does this Netflix tax apply there?
Yeah, digital services. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting. Okay. Well, Will, as you think about growing your brand, the Woven brand, globally, we talk a lot at Guelph around localizing the customer experience, and whether that's from a merchandising perspective, could be marketing, could be the product lineup itself. How do you kind of look at, okay, where do you grow this global reach that you're striving for?
Absolutely. I mean, we are focusing on kind of our core markets that I mentioned to start, but I think there are a ton of emerging markets that we definitely don't want to ignore. And in short, I'd say that, we want to expand worldwide as much as we can, and basically anywhere where we can run profitable paid social ads and acquire new customers and new markets, the more the merrier.
So does it start with, in kind of an arbitrage-like way, looking at where can we acquire customers, below a certain threshold or something like that?
Right. And then looking at their, repeat purchase rate and lifetime value and all of that. And then also, where are there retailers that we can get into to kind of have that omni-channel presence in those markets as well.
Yeah, we had talked earlier. We forgot to talk about some of where you're doing drop ship in some cases, right? With some retailers.
Yeah, we do drop ship with like Urban Outfitters, Express, Pacific Sunwear, and a number of others. So that's great for exposure worldwide as well.
Yeah, so that's part of that wholesale business that you're looking to kind of get in all the Urban Outfitters stores or something like that?
Exactly. Yeah, that's the hope. So.
Yeah, interesting. How about wholesale internationally, right? So again, if you were looking to find again a good retailer partner in Canada, the UK, wherever.
Yeah, well, the Fair B2B marketplace has been a great tool for us for that. We get a ton of just random orders coming in from studios all over Canada and really around the world. So yeah, we're very excited about Fair, and also just building out our own wholesale site for continuing to grow that presence there.
Yeah, again, the B2B marketplace, space certainly has been, very, very hot. I'm curious to hear more as you kind of continue to, be on Fair. Like, is it all small boutiques, kind of, 1 to 2 store places, or do you actually find some bigger retailers actually kind of, sourcing there?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, for now, it is smaller boutiques who can actually be fantastic customers. But actually, yes, we have had a few kind of larger specialty stores and many majors who have placed orders through Fair, especially because Fair offers incredible incentives where they actually give the buyer things like net 60 or net 90, and then they still pay us, the brand, up front. And then they even offer like free returns where they don't even return the product to the brand, they just return it to Fair and eat the cost. So lots of cool incentives there.
That is kind of interesting. I did not know that. Tom, tell us, what's happening, with the soon the next changes, regulatory changes.
Yeah, the third big impact coming up is called CARM, which is it's a mouthful. It's the Canada Border Services Agency Assessment and Revenue Management Program, and what that means is they're really changing how things are shipped B2B. Traditionally, your customs broker is taking care of all this. They're managing the clearance, the payments of duties and taxes, the remittance, the filing. They're taking care of all this stuff. It clears on their surety bond, so things aren't held at the border. It's called release prior to payment, right? It's things fly right through the border, and the broker makes sure that duties and taxes owed are paid, and they have a bond in place to give CBSA some assurances that somebody's going to pay the tab. But all that's going to change when CARM rolls out, and we're looking at a January launch date for this, because it's going to put the burden back on the importer. And in cases like Will selling through Fair to a yoga studio, it's a lot to ask them to go through this process on the left here to register for this CARM portal, to get a surety bond, to figure out how to allocate duties and taxes and make sure the filings are completed. And it's a big burden for them to ask to do that. So it's likely that they're going to push that back on U.S. retailers like Will to figure this out for them. So it's a big change in how things are cleared today for B2B, and something to be aware of, and how we can possibly make this as simple as possible for U.S. merchants. And one way to do that is just for your shipper to take on that responsibility for you as the owner of the goods or the merchant or seller of records. So that's the path we're heading down, is to make that as painless as possible by taking on this process of the registration, the filing, the surety bond, making sure everything is in compliance with Canada Border Services Agency and Canada Revenue Agency, CRA.
So what about things like duty drawback? We were talking about that, as again a service you guys do, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating, because the other piece we handle is the return. So now that DDP, where the shipper, duties and taxes are collected at time of checkout, there's a lot of money that can be left on the table when products are returned from Canada to the U.S. There's a couple programs that can help the merchant or the Canadian consumer recover the duties and taxes. So just as an example, if you're shipping into Ontario, it's a 13% tax rate. Your customer certainly doesn't want to have to eat that and only get refunded the price, the retail price, right? They want to make sure that they're made whole and they're not paying duties and taxes that they're not able to recoup. So that's part of it. The other is we see a lot of brands import finished goods into the U.S. and then ship them to Canada and fulfill rest of world. And the challenge there is that you're paying U.S. duties and taxes on that first import, but then when you ship them to Canada, you're also paying duties and taxes in Canada. So the U.S. Drawback program helps the shippers who are importing finished goods and then re-exporting them in the same condition recover 99% of those U.S. duties and taxes paid. So it's really a space of the market that's been a bit overlooked, because the opportunity there historically has been with manufacturers and not e-commerce brands. But the big shift is with the 301 tariffs and the Trump tariffs, as they're called. The duty rates on many things like apparel has gone up 35%, and it's a major impact to the amount of U.S. duties and taxes that they're paying on the import of finished goods.
Yeah, it's one of those sources of cash flow that I think a lot of companies don't realize, but also it's a kind of onerous process, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's a lot of data that's involved in collecting, and it's a tedious application process to get through it. But once you do, you're in good shape to continue those filings. And the big benefit for the U.S. drawback is you can go back 5 years. So if you think of all the duties and taxes you paid on goods that have been imported and then re-exported, it could be a massive amount of money to recover. And for the brand, there's very little work to do. The burden is really on a drawback provider to put all the documents together. So for a brand, it's pretty painless. It's really free money.
So what do you see out there, Tom, in terms of the burden now, the importer of record burden now shifting, to the retailers? Is that causing a lot of angst out there?
It certainly is, and it's why the CARM program has been pushed back. It was really supposed to launch in April of this year. And smaller retailers in Canada push back on it because it is such a shift in how they import today. If you're lucky enough for your Canadian buyer to be the importer, they just give their business number, their tax ID, and they're considered the importer. But with this shift, it's a burden on the merchant to the point that the small gyms and fitness studios and yoga studios are really looking at this and struggling with how they're going to manage it. So the shift here has been to push it back a little bit and give others a time to adjust to it and to possibly get registered for the platform. Because once it's live, it's you don't want to have something waiting at the border to be cleared and now have to go through this process of registering and getting a surety bond and figuring out how to navigate this portal.
Well, as we said right from the opening remarks this morning, again, we said it takes a village. It really does, when it comes to cross-border and global e-commerce. So again, some good examples there. Well, let's just kind of, talk a little bit, again, future looking. You mentioned that something around the LA brand kind of positioning. Tell us, we've seen that, I think, with other brands like Outer Known, right? Again, Surf brand just has that kind of California, profile to it. Is that kind of, what you're after? Not specifically Surf, but yeah.
Yeah, basically, I would say that we just want to really maintain that Southern California kind of lifestyle vibe, and project that out around the world. And it is tempting to go all out and translate every single thing in every single market. But we just feel like at least for now, maintaining the U.S. brand image really is kind of our plan, and we think that kind of resonates with people worldwide as the demand for U.S. brands is so high. But of course, we do need to make sure at least they have currency conversion and DDP shipping, so that there's no anxiety about a tax bill or having to chase down to the post office or any of that.
Yeah, I think we've heard a lot, today around the importance of influencers in any marketing campaigns. So does that mean you're seeking out local influencers who still kind of represent that Southern Cal kind of lifestyle?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And influencer is a huge piece of our marketing mix, and as we continue to kind of scale worldwide, we're definitely going to be looking for local influencers in those emerging markets. So.
I know when we talked earlier as well, like you said you were kind of shifting some from air to ocean freight. What's behind that?
Yeah, well, ocean freight is more sustainable, of course, than air freight. For us, it's a challenge in terms of inventory forecasting far enough in advance, because, as I mentioned, we have so many prints and SKUs, and what sold last month might not be what sells next month after some influencer or Facebook ad takes off. So for now, we are still using air freight, but the carbon footprint is totally offset through DHL Go Green, in addition to climate neutral. So. But yeah, that is on our long-term plan to switch to ocean freight. Just thankfully, it wasn't last year when everything fell apart.
Yeah, right. Or you'd still be looking at your product out in the harbor there. Yeah.
Right.
I think that's what we've heard. I think throughout the day in terms of the sustainable message. That we're from a lot of companies and brands, and how it's factoring into their decision-making process. So, that's really where it feels like it's no longer all talk and no action. There is a lot of action happening. So good for you guys. Any questions, from the audience, here before we wrap up? Yeah, please.
I feel like I'm asking a lot of questions today. So to summarize what you mentioned, this change, right? So I'm a D2C brand, also based in LA. We do have customers who buy in Canada. We also operate FBA in Amazon Canada. So we have this business number. I was on the phone with them this morning about something else in CRA. What does this mean in our situation? It seems like they changed the threshold, so maybe we could get away with it, but then they're going to change it to this other thing, so you still need the business number? What is like the still?
Yeah, good question. So Amazon's not going to be your importer, as you know. So that burden's going to be on you to be the importer when you're shipping to Amazon fulfillment centers in Canada. But you can't have two streams, right? You can have a direct-to-consumer stream and this B2B stream where you're shipping to the fulfillment center. So D2C stream, the easiest thing to do is to just balance that in what they call paying Division 3 taxes at the border. So the thing here is, I think if you ask an accountant, you're going to get one view. And if you ask a customs broker, you might get another view. So it's really talking to someone who understands trade and tax to help you navigate both of those potential streams.
Okay, well, with that, I want to thank both guys here again for joining us on stage, sharing the story. We'll be interested to watch Woven going forward. And I also want to mention to all of you that again, this deck will be made available, and Tom and the team at Passport have put actually a lot of really good information in kind of an appendix as well, just common myths and things like that. So again, really encourage you guys we'll have that available for download after the conference. So again, thank you very much, guys, and we'll be kind of moving into the last session of the day before the roundtables at 4:30. So thanks again.
Thanks for having us.
All right.